Hey y'all, this video gives an overview of applying for unemployment insurance in California. I'm going to discuss who's eligible, how long benefits last, how much money you can get, how to apply, and how to appeal if your claim is denied. And because I'm filming this video in 2021, I'm going to mention some COVID-specific information along the way. Unemployment insurance is a state program run by the Employment Development Department, the EDD. It provides temporary payments to people transitioning between jobs, but not everyone can get it. There are 7 requirements to qualify for unemployment. First, you must be totally or partially unemployed. Partially unemployed includes when your employer furloughs you or reduces your hours by a certain amount. Second, you must be physically able to work. If you're unable to work because of an illness or a disability, you can't get unemployment, but there are other programs out there to help you, like state disability insurance. Third, you must be available to work. This also means that you must be legally allowed to work. So, undocumented people cannot get unemployment because they cannot legally work in the United States. Fourth, you must be ready and willing to accept work immediately. Fifth, you must be actively looking for work. Because of the pandemic, the EDD has temporarily suspended this requirement, but it will eventually restart once the economy opens back up. 6, you must have made sufficient income in the past to justify getting unemployment. To make this determination, the EDD looks at how much money you made during a recent 12-month period called your base period. The base period is a bit complicated, so instead of explaining it here, I'm going to include a link below to the EDD's explanation. Another important thing to mention is that income you earned during your base period as a business owner, as a self-employed person, or as an independent contractor does not count toward unemployment. So these types of workers generally cannot collect unemployment insurance. However, in response to the pandemic, the government created a new temporary program called PUA, Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, that covers these workers. PUA is pretty much identical to regular unemployment insurance, and you apply for it the same way. And 7th, you must be unemployed through no fault of your own. This last requirement is where most of the disputes happen. A worker is unemployed through no fault of their own if they're laid off for lack of work, their contract expires, they lose their job because the business is sold, they're fired for a reason other than misconduct, or they quit with good cause. These last 2 are the most complicated, so let's take a closer look. We'll first talk about when someone is fired, then we'll talk about when someone quits their job. If you're fired from your job, you're eligible for unemployment unless the employer can prove they fired you for misconduct. Misconduct has a very technical legal definition, and I'll include a link below to the EDD's full explanation. But to put it simply, misconduct basically means that acting intentionally or recklessly, you significantly violated an expectation of your job and harmed your employer. Let's start with some examples of what misconduct isn't. Misconduct does not include poor performance or failure to meet the employer's standards. If you're putting in a decent effort but the employer just isn't happy with your performance, that's not misconduct. A single incident of ordinary negligence. You accidentally miss a minor deadline. You forget to charge a customer for a small purchase. If it's one time and it's unintentional and it's not that big of a deal, it's not misconduct. A good faith error in judgment. Say, for example, you're a tree trimmer. Your boss tells you to trim a tree, but you trim it a little too much and the tree dies. If it wasn't intentional, it's probably not misconduct. Off-duty conduct. For example, using alcohol or illegal drugs is usually not misconduct if it's done outside of work and doesn't affect your ability to work. This is generally true even if the employer discovers your drug use through a drug test. But in limited cases, off-duty drug use can be misconduct if it's so closely related to your job that it destroys your suitability for the job. For example, off-duty drug use can be misconduct for a pharmacist, but not for most other jobs. So then what does constitute misconduct? Insubordination. Now, the line between poor performance and insubordination is hazy. Insubordination generally requires that you're intentionally disobeying your employer. You know better, but you choose to do the wrong thing. And it usually requires multiple instances of an issue and prior warnings by the employer. In contrast, poor performance is when you're putting in a decent effort at your job, but the employer just isn't satisfied. Absenteeism and tardiness. If you're just not showing up and don't have a good reason, that can be misconduct. And if you're repeatedly late without a good reason and you've had multiple warnings about it, that can also be misconduct. Dishonesty, lying to your employer or stealing from the employer or a coworker is usually misconduct. Discourtesy toward customers or the public can be misconduct if the employer previously warned you about it. Threatening or causing violence on the job is usually misconduct. Sleeping on the job can be misconduct, especially when it happens more than once. And using alcohol or illegal drugs at work is usually misconduct if the employer doesn't allow it. Now, what if you quit your job? The rule is that people who quit their job can only get unemployment if they had good cause to quit and they took reasonable steps to keep their job if possible. Good cause means that a reasonable person who wanted to stay employed also would have quit that job. Reasons that are usually good cause to quit include a compelling domestic situation, like moving for your spouse or to escape domestic violence, a reasonable fear for your health. If that's the case, you probably need to request a transfer or a leave of absence before quitting if either of those would fix the problem. And if you're going to quit, it's very helpful to get a letter from a doctor saying that your health requires you to quit. Unsafe working conditions, for example, if your employer is not giving you proper safety equipment. Intolerable working conditions or abusive supervisors, but it has to be pretty severe. Being dissatisfied with your job or just having a typical clash with a supervisor is not good cause. Illegal discrimination or harassment based on a protected category like race, sex, or disability. Illegal or unethical orders. For example, if you're a salesperson and your manager tells you to lie to customers about a product. Illegal withholding of wages if your employer is not paying you all of the money that they owe you. A substantial reduction in pay. If your boss reduces your pay by 20% or more, that's probably good cause to quit. And substantial commuting difficulties. For example, if you don't make much money and your commute increases from 10 minutes to an hour with a $3 toll, that's probably good cause to quit. Okay, now let's go over some reasons that are not good cause to quit. Job dissatisfaction or a disagreement with management is normally not good cause to quit, unless the situation is really intolerable or abusive. A change in your work schedule is not good cause to quit, unless you really can't work the new schedule. A reduction in hours is not good cause to quit. The state expects you to use the extra time to find full-time work instead of quitting and having no job at all. But if the employer reduces your hours, you might be able to collect partial unemployment benefits while continuing to work your reduced schedule. Quitting your job to search for a new one is usually not good cause. Being under or overqualified for a job usually is not good cause to quit. Having no opportunity for advancement is not good cause to quit. Transitioning to self-employment or school is usually not good cause. Believing that your boss is going to fire you is not good cause. Even if they've given you a future date of termination, you have to wait until the company actually fires you. And disagreeing with a disciplinary action is also usually not good cause. Now, remember, even if you have good cause to quit, you must take reasonable steps to fix the problem if possible. This usually means telling the employer and giving them a chance to resolve it. If you quit without taking any steps to fix the problem, you might not qualify for unemployment, even though you had good cause to quit. If you're approved for unemployment, there's normally a 7-day waiting period before your benefits start. However, the state has temporarily removed this waiting period because of the pandemic. Normally, most people can collect up to 26 weeks of benefits in a year, although that can vary a bit from person to person. If your benefits run out, you can file a second claim 52 weeks after you filed your original claim. Because of the pandemic, the government has offered several benefit extensions beyond the normal 26-week limit. The EDD automatically applies these extensions, so if you're on unemployment, you don't need to do anything special to receive them. Once you file your claim, the EDD will determine your weekly benefit amount based on how much money you earned during your base period. The minimum benefit amount is $40 per week and the maximum is $450. During the pandemic, the government has added payments on top of this. It was $600 per week and then $300 per week. If you do qualify for any extra payments, the EDD will automatically apply it. You can apply for unemployment by phone and mail, but the fastest way is to apply online. Before you apply, you'll want to gather the necessary documents, and I'll include a link to what you'll need. After submitting your application, the EDD may schedule a phone interview. This is normal, so it's nothing to worry about. You'll want to be ready to explain why leaving your job wasn't your fault and the steps that you're taking to find other work. If the EDD denies your claim, they'll send you an appeal form and you'll have 30 days to appeal. All you have to write on the appeal form is, "I disagree with the decision, I want to appeal." You don't need to give a long explanation. If the EDD awards you benefits, the employer can also appeal the decision. If you or the employer appeal your claim, an administrative law judge will hold a hearing with you and the employer. The hearing usually takes place in a conference room with you on one side of the table and the employer on the other side. The judge will ask both of you questions and you'll have the chance to present any relevant documents. This hearing is pretty informal and you don't need a lawyer to go with you. After the judge makes a decision, either side can then appeal again to the California Unemployment Insurance Appeals Board and then again to state court, but that rarely happens. Okay, well, I hope this was helpful. Good luck to you.